all you digital wizards out there. Today I'm going to be making a super potato inspired by one of my students. I'm not going to name names because I think that is important not to do, but I'm going to show you some of the tools that I use. For instance, I make my own brushes, which you can see right here, that are controlled by pressure. Basically what I'm talking about is a brush that the more pressure you put onto your tablet or your device, the thicker the line will become, and the less pressure you put on, the thinner the line will become. It gives it a more organic feel, and I really like the way that this comes out. As you can see, I'm trying to work on a very dynamic pose for my super potato, and I want him to be a little bit pudgy, a little bit dirty, because that's what I imagine a potato will be. But he's also a superhero, so he's gotta be kind of lovable and things like that. I had a really hard time figuring out what to do with his legs. At first I thought maybe I could have him kind of flying down to do a punch, and then I was like, no, I'll have him kind of do a quick speed run or something like that. But then when I started getting into his arms, the legs just didn't quite make sense as I was going. And you'll see that as I do this. So this left arm that I'm working on right now, it was really just getting in the way of that left leg. It was too close. It was really messing with the silhouette, and I was not loving the way that looked. And honestly, that back leg just kept feeling like it was disconnected no matter what I did. I'm not sure why, but I just did not love the way it was working. So yeah, I kept this for the time being, but then I kept moving on and changing things as I went. Now, what you're noticing right now is that I'm making my beginning outline, which I'm gonna, use to build up my character. And of course, I'm still working on that leg because that leg was a real bummer to work with. And I'm making some different lines there to show where the face is gonna go across and the eyes are gonna be and things like that. So at this point, I start making his face, and I play with the teeth to make sure that they're nice and round, and I'm giving him this nice open face that you can kind of fall in love with, and big eyes to kind of show that he's this lovable character. I'm really inspired by luchadors on this one because I feel like they're basically what we aspire to be as a superhero, because if you look at a lot of superhero costumes, say, one of our biggest ones, Superman, he basically wears a luchador costume, and so I was kind of using that as my inspiration for my super potato. And I made this right arm much bigger, kind of like Popeye, because I really wanted to push the strength aspect of it. At this point, he's kind of reminding me of a Ninja Turtle, especially with the mask, because I went with the half mask at first, but I didn't like the way it was looking. I didn't like the little bow tie in the back, so I took it away, and instead I'm focusing on this cape. And then I'm kind of pushing more of a chin here, giving him a belt, more of a luchador feel. At first I gave him kind of this tank top feeling. I'm using the laced shoes, which are very much like a luchador does. They're more of a wrestling shoe than anything else. And now I'm finally fixing that right leg to because honestly, it needed fixing. So I started off with this kind of shirt thing, but then I realized that it wasn't showing enough of the potato, so I decided to go with skin. So as I was coloring him up, I'm like, that's not enough brown in there, so I took away the sleeves and instead added a little bow tie for my cape and went ahead with shirtless. So all the colors I chose, I wanted to give him a very potato-like feeling, so I stuck with a lot of yellows and whites and browns, a lot of earthy tones, honestly. Except for his cape, which is this dark reddish color. So now I'm going in and I'm putting in my highlights just to give him some feel. And I'm imagining that the light's coming from the top right. So I'm pushing the highlights from that area, kind of bringing them in, and then going in and making my shadows, which are going to be coming in from the opposite side. So you can see those shadows coming in, especially on the cape. And honestly, this is one of my favorite parts of the process, is bringing in those highlights and shadows, because the character just pops so much more when you put those in. So here you can see I'm kind of like dirtying him up with some texture. And I'm using a charcoal brush to do that, just kind of giving him a little grunge around the edges to give him more of a potato-y feel. Because I don't know about you guys, but I always imagine potatoes being a little bit dirty because they come from the ground. So I wanted to give them that feel. And then I'm adding these little dots in, like the little potato eyes, to also push that potato feel for him. I'm rotating them around, adding in a shadow, and then adding in some background color and some light as I go. Again, trying to stick with that kind of potato feel, so I'm using that reddish yellow kind of feel. And then I'm adding more shadows in next to his feet and a grounding shadow right where underneath where his shoes are. I'm using blend modes a lot too, so right here when I start adding in some texture, I'm using these little spots and using a blend mode to kind of blend it all together, and then I use my transparency to kind of turn it down a bit so it's just not overwhelming. I also then make a masked out shape with some feather to it, just so that it kind of fades into that a little bit more. And here are some action lines to kind of push that superhero feeling, again using a blend mode to kind of blend it all together, and putting in my final shadow here to really push that. I started trying making some highlights for his eyes, but then I moved on. I cleaned up here, just some of the areas that needed cleaning up, and then I wanted to focus on making his text. So I played with some different fonts, and the one I liked the best was actually this apple juice font. And I was struggling with some of the colors on this, so I actually made my own specific shape to put that font on. And I was trying to figure out what his best logo would be, things like that, but I just really felt like the letters weren't popping enough. So I kept playing with it, trying different blend modes, and then when I got to this kind of greenish yellow one, I was like set. I knew that was the color I wanted to use, and then I put like a different color on top just to kind of give it more of a 3D feel, and that was perfect. I really loved the way that worked. And then I wrote my little saying on the bottom, which is "Nothing can stop this Spud," and I used the same techniques on that I did on the top part. And that's it. I completed it. I really liked the way it came out. I added my little highlights for his eyes and did some final cleanups. And I noticed that the "Nothing Can Stop This Spud" wasn't standing out quite enough, so I just gave it some dark tones underneath, did a multiply, and now that pops even more, and I really like the way the whole thing came out. I enjoy the way this one came out, and I really hope that my student loves my idea of what the Super Potato should look like. Well, until next time, guys, I hope to see you again.